So the last video that I made, I talked a lot about just the differences between Figma and Framer. But today I want to go through some of the specifics between Figma and Framer, just some nuanced differences that I've picked up as I've been using Framer more, coming from a Figma user in the past. So let's get right into this. Okay, so the first difference that I want to point out is the logic behind auto layout and stacks. Typically when I design, I like to just design freely and not think about structure or stacks or anything like that. And so I like to just put things on the canvas and I start to line them up. And then I know that that'll get cleaned up once I start adding auto layout as I go along. So this is a design that this section here has no auto layout attached. Everything's just free floating. And then once I'm ready to have this become, more pixel perfect, I'll start to add the auto layout. And so I just start clicking my elements, adding auto layout, and then not much happens, but now I have auto layout added. And now this is like one frame that the elements within it are being contained. And also, let me mention with just like a button, this is how I would typically build a button, is I just build a frame and a text. And then I will just kind of line that up, and then I'll add auto layout. And Figma can detect that I'm trying to build a button here, which is great. And that's always how I've done things, because I like to work in very low fidelity at first, and then I slowly get to higher fidelity as I go along. And Figma is great with that workflow. So then I can come in here and I can just start adding auto layout, and I just can see it. This is sort of a container. These two, we'll put those as a container. And then these all come together in a container. And then it kind of smartly adds it up, and it doesn't really move my elements around. It just kind of locks them into place, and now I have this master container that everything's contained. If I want to get to a specific element, I hold down Command, and it'll just take me to that element directly. If I want to get to this text or to this arrow, I just hold down Command. It takes me right to it, bypassing all the other layers that is within. This is a little different in Framer. If you see my frustration with Framer and you know that there's a different way to get away from this, please let me know. But if I want to start adding some structure here, it works just a little bit differently. So let's say I want this logo to be like wrapped. If I do that and add a stack, pressing the same button, Shift A, immediately it stretches across the entire frame. It thinks that I'm trying to keep this element within this frame, and it stretches it. It automatically puts it at 100% width relative. And then I got to come in here and change that to fit content, and then it pushes it all the way back to the far left. And if you go back to the beginning, I had it right here. So in a lot of the ways, all I want to do is just add a little, can keep this within a box, and I just want to add some padding around it. But in order to do that, I just need to have a different workflow to that. And it's not the workflow that I'm used to. And I wish that I didn't have to do it a different way than it looks like it's making me here, because I add it to fit content, and then I move it back. And then this is the other issue that I just don't like with Framer, is rather than selecting the parent element and then having the command button to get to the specific element that I want, it automatically takes me to the inner element, like whatever I'm highlighted over, and it just assumes that I want just that. If I want to take the whole stack, then I can hold down Command, and then I can access that. And so, but even then, sometimes it works a little weird. Like I'll hold down Command, and it actually takes the frame like this. And so there's just too many times that it's not snapping to the element that I want. It'll grab the text, and then I'll take the text out. And so I got to make sure that I'm on the stack and then moving that. The next issue that just kind of bugs me is the way that padding works. All these things that I'm bringing up are like first world problems. So it's not like that big of a deal, but to me, there's just a little bit friction. In Figma, I like the way that Figma works. You have the padding slider over here, which is a slider. I can click it and I can just slide it along. I can add my value here. And just like that, I get top and bottom. I can slide. To me, that just makes sense how that works. On the other hand of Framer, it gives me one input for padding that affects all four sides. So it's top, bottom, left, and right. So if I add a value here, it adds it to the whole, which is fine. And that's good, I guess, if you find yourself having pretty equal padding on all sides. But in my own use case, it's a lot more common for me to have less on the top and bottom, more on the left and right. I mean, Framer's nice because you can click and drag, and that affects both. But if you come here to get more specific, saying we don't want 12 all around, we just want 12 on the top and bottom, then you can go to this, and it has this top, right, bottom, and left. And this, I just do not like this structure. That to me is just, it messes with my mind. I feel like that it should be top and bottom next to each other, left and right. And instead it's super complicated that you start on the top. So it's like, okay, I want 7 on the top and then the bottom. And then I'm like, immediately, I normally think that should be right next to it, but it's not. This is just a little tiny bit of friction that makes designing feel a little frustrating in some aspects. And the more I use it, the more I just use these little sliders to click and drag things. But I do wish that this resembled more of Figma on the sides, because Figma is just really fast to add my side padding, and it's usually uniform, because it's a lot more common that I just want my left and right to have equal padding than for them to not be equal. And so I wish that was the default rather than having to input the top and bottoms, especially when it's my left and right sliders here aren't showing up, so I have to come here. Another really small difference is just the way that the buttons are structured. So in Figma, I start low fidelity, and I usually use just really rough, like, geometric shapes. Like, I'll usually even just have like no text yet, and I'll just add some rectangles to sort of get that idea across. And then I'll come in later and be like, okay, well, here's my button now. So I'll add my button, line it up like I do in Figma, and then add auto layout, and then it moves, because it just thinks that this is a solid element and that they need to be stacked on top of each other, rather than seeing it and thinking, oh, they're using this rectangle as a frame, and then let's nest that and create this rectangle as the frame. It doesn't automatically do that. This is just a simple change of turning it into a frame rather than a rectangle, and then adding that, and then you'll see that you don't have any issues, and it works the same way. But then here's another example that when I added the stack, it automatically changed to fit content and didn't keep my button the same. And so then I need to click into this stack and add my padding. So let's say I add 12, but I don't want 12 on top and bottom. It's just more clicking. Sure, I can move around with my tabs and stuff, but the difference with the stacks. So I come in here and I start to add my structure. So I add a stack, and it automatically aligns it to the center. So I got to come here and move it back to the left. It's just one extra click that within Figma is usually smart enough to just say, this is how his structure is. These two elements are aligned to the left, so let's just snap it to the left. And it usually gets it right a lot more than this. So I click this again. It thinks I want to just push it to the center. I got to do an extra click. Then I have this. And then I try to go into this element, and then I click and move it, and I grabs the inner element rather than just grabbing the parent element. You play this cursor game where you're trying to, not hover over anything and grab the part that's blank. And to me, it's just a little backwards how it should be. The amount of times that I want to grab a specific element rather than the parent element is a lot more unlikely. And so I like that Figma seems smart enough to understand that I'll probably rather just move the entire element around since I've added auto layout. But if I want to grab the header, I just click in, hold down Command, click it, and then I, have access to that element, and then it's fine. So those are two things that I prefer in Figma. I'm sure would be simple to change in Framer, and maybe there's a way that I can change my preferences to have it behave like this. But let's go to a win for Framer, and that is the component-based workflow. So both of them utilize component-based workflow. In Figma, you get your primary variant. Here, with all the other variants, so if I click and add a variant, then it adds to this, sort of frame, and it lives on my canvas. My components within here that are instances of that component. So any change that I make to the primary variant will affect the variants across all of my pages. So if I change the fill, it changes up here, but then it also changes across my boards. And that works great. But Framers is a little cleaner because I find that a lot of my primary variants are kind of lost within my canvas somewhere, and then it snaps me to that, and then to go back to my actual page is a little bit messy. So if I come in and I create a component, it takes me to a new component page that's nested within my design page. So here I can create my variants and I can make my changes here, but it lives in its own, its own separate spot. I love how simple and effective this is. It just works super well. And I know that Figma is really mostly just building prototypes, but I wish that they could allow you to have, more higher fidelity prototypes with just really simple changes like this that can make your prototypes reach a whole new level and keep things really clean and tidy. This is all just within here, the design. Now this is a component. I click on that. It takes me back to this. That's super easy, super clean. Whereas in Figma, I can't even begin to tell you the amount of times that I am changing an instant, forgetting that it's just an instant. It's not the actual master component, and it doesn't change across the whole thing. If I come in here and just change it because I thought this was the primary element, it's not. And then these other elements here are just remaining the same color. And my canvas, look, I'll even show you, my canvases can get pretty messy. And it's just a little harder to keep track of my components within Figma. The main difference that I use for Figma and Framer is I just think about, am I building a website and am I going to build that just and have it hosted within Framer? Sure, then I'm going to build it in Framer. But if I'm building a UI, or if I'm, building an app or something like that, then I'm going to go to Figma just because Figma has more resources to take my design further. So those are the three ones that I've noticed in my day-to-day use. And as I use both of them, Framer for the websites that I build, and then Figma for more of the UI, apps that I'm building, I have muscle memory for both of them, I guess. And so it is hard to kind of go back and forth. And so I wish that there was a way that I could have them behave the same way. So I don't have to think about that at all, and these problems could be solved. But yeah, thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please give a like, and I'll see you next time.